Hi, Hamaad. How are you? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Martin. I'm great. How are you?
Very well, very well. Really excited to have you today on this program, Fireside Chats. Well, look, for the benefit of the audience, I'd love if you wouldn't mind just to give a bit of an introduction on yourself and your background professionally.
Yeah, absolutely. So I currently am in the value management space at ServiceNow. I've been at ServiceNow for about 6 years, doing a lot of different things. Started off on the public sector or federal government side, really helping build out that practice to and be enabling the entire value management process for the federal government in general. A lot of times the government buys a little bit differently than your enterprise organization. And so there was an opportunity to use some of the experience that I've had in the past. I come from a little bit of a public sector background as well, as an engineer before and a consultant in the for government contractors and other things like that. And so the opportunity was great because it allowed me to leverage some of the experience that I've had in the past and work in an organization that was fairly mature on the value management side. Coming from Informatica prior to that, that was a very immature, nascent value management team. And I can talk a little bit more about that a little bit later. For that ServiceNow experience was me to get a little bit more exposure to what a more mature organization looks like, how it scales, and then also bringing that capability into a set of customers that don't really buy that way. But it's extremely important for them to understand how the solutions they're buying support mission, right? And that's kind of the focus that we wanted to bring to to those customers. Or after that, I started leading a team within ServiceNow on the sales ops side, really bringing some of that value analysis, value management practice to how our IT teams are providing applications, solutions, and services to our sales organization, our go-to-market organization. Really brought some of the same rigor to that process where it's understanding the outcomes of our sales organization. What do they need? What do they need technology to enable so they can work better and spend more time with their customers, right? Nobody wants to be in, your CRM tool or, working in fighting different processes for most of the day. They want to spend time with their customers. So I worked to help build out a team and a function that really highlighted how value drove adoption, drove priority and prioritization from our IT team to support our go-to-market team.
That that point, just sorry to interrupt, it reminded me of that stat that something like sales reps only spend 2.5 hours per day selling. The rest is on pipeline management, CRM, hygiene, and all that stuff.
Yeah, and now with the phone and obviously AI, hopefully there's opportunities to spend more time with the customer
Yeah.
by removing some of that administrative burden that they feel and they face with. So I did that for a couple of years, and you know what I missed? I missed the interaction with the customer, right? And I'm sure you've heard this many times with people that you've had conversations with, but the opportunity to work with customers to help them solve their problems, to really work with them to break down complex problems into smaller issues. That's kind of what I missed. And so there was an opportunity to come back in the value management space to help build out kind of similar to what I did on the public sector side, but with nonprofit organizations. And so now I'm working with our ServiceNow.org business to bring value selling to our nonprofit customers.
Fascinating. Simply, I
Yes.
mean, the sheer difference between selling to an enterprise versus selling to government, I would love to dive right into that because I'm sure there's not even nuance, like massive differences in how the two different types of organizations buy and therefore how you need to engage with them and sell to them. Yeah, I'd love just to learn more about those differences and how you've had to adapt.
Yeah. So, coming from the consulting world and working with enterprise organizations, right? They're always looking to do a couple of things, right? One is how can we reduce costs and drive efficiency? And then two, how does that then impact our margins and drive revenue? When you're thinking about how the value management process works with enterprise organizations, there's a lot of similarities there, right?
Mm.
In terms of what we're trying to help accomplish. When you're talking to the federal government or you're talking to public sector organizations, the mission comes first, right? What are we doing for our constituents? What are we doing for the public? What are we doing for the veterans, right? How are we then enabling technology so we can spend more time with the people that we're trying to serve. And so when you're trying to sell to them, they don't really care about reducing cost, right? They don't really care about the revenue or profit because that doesn't exist for them. So the mission is key. The mission is paramount, and that's kind of what we try to focus on when you're selling to them, understanding what the mission is, where are their gaps and challenges, right? And how that's impacting not just the organization, but specific individuals or business units or functions within the agency that you're working with. Because then you can highlight, right? What could an incremental improvement in productivity mean for not just the individual that's working, but then the veteran or the constituent on the other side. And so telling that story is extremely important. Getting buy-in to identify that the capabilities that you have within what you're selling can unlock that is the tough part. And so that's where you want to focus on, right?
Yeah.
That's where we tell the story. And then value comes with it, right? There's the value aspect of it that comes through and say, there is more time that you can spend. So, financial or monetary benefits don't really drive a lot of consensus. It's more around, hey, what can some of those non-monetized benefits better serve the purpose of what story you're trying to tell?
What you would call soft benefits on the enterprise side sometimes. It's interesting because I'm sure, well, would love to learn from you, but are there differences in the personas that you're dealing with? Say a career public servant working in the public sector that you're selling to versus a career VP or some or do the champion do you have to engage them in a different way, engage them through discovery, the different phases?
Yeah, you absolutely do. And I learned this early on. So prior to being introduced to the value management space, I worked in consulting. So I worked at a organization that really focused on supplier and manufacturing efficiencies, improvements,
A.T. Kearney,
strategy.
right?
Correct. Yeah. So I was at A.T. Kearney, and we focused on that. But I did a little bit of public sector work at that time. So we were working with the Navy. And so we were really focused on how to help them improve their sourcing process. And every time we would go in to have a conversation with people, we've got just a lot of pushback where, they just wanted to focus on their work, where we're trying to help drive efficiency improvement, cost reduction, a whole host of other things. And they didn't seem all that interested in that process. And the reason that is because, they've been doing things a specific way for a specific time. They have a goal that they have in mind, and they have to do it fairly quickly, right? And they're dealing with specific vendors. They don't have a whole multitude or a book of vendors that they can go to. Sometimes they're limited to one or two, right? And so their thought is, how are you going to drive efficiency or cost reduction in a process where I don't have a lot of options? I just need to get my work done and I need to move on. And so what I learned early on in that process was, okay, what are some of the challenges and gaps that an individual is facing with, and what can we focus on to make their individual life better, right? And so, knowing that, coming into the role that I did at ServiceNow, specifically around the federal government, we brought that thought process to the conversation. So you have to think about it a little bit differently, specifically when you're going through discovery, right? Understanding the pain points. Yes, there's organizational pain points. Yes, there's constituent and beneficiary pain points. But what is the pain point of that specific individual that you are going to help unlock to make their life easier, make their life better? And so those conversations with those personas, I really focused on having those types of conversations as well as part of discovery to really be able to get to the crux of what we were trying to accomplish for the agency as a whole. And so those personas could be, people who are at the forefront of helping veterans get loans. These people could also be procurement individuals who are buying and purchasing engines for aircraft carriers, right? And they could also be organizations that are really just trying to get simple processes within the organization, from project management, IT service management, onboarding and offboarding, those types of things working better as well. And, so that's not too far from the folks that you work with on the enterprise side. But sometimes, the things that you're talking to and what it could improve for their agency, you just have to understand that a little bit more in detail.
And the sales process must be a bit different, right? Because it's on the public sector side, there must be a much more rigid system of finding a vendor through, a tender process. There must be quite a kind of production line model, right?
Yeah. So, there's different contracts that you have to go through, different organizations that you partner with, different access to contract vehicles that you have to be associated with and be approved for, right?
Yeah.
And so, yes, there's a little, and then obviously the security piece of it as well. When you're working in the cloud, you have to have secure cloud. So there's aspects of things where
Right. Of
how
course.
can you have, things that are regulated by the government, and meet the approvals and milestones to be able to sell to different types of agencies. From the civilian side to the military side, all the way up to the intelligence side, right? And so there's different markers that you have to meet to be able to do that. So yeah, there's a lot of organizations that struggle to sell, and at that point, who cares about value, right? You have to hit these technical benchmarks to be able to do that. But even, when you get to the intel space, when you're talking to organizations who are really keen on improving what they're doing and how they're using technology from a digital transformation standpoint. And we've gone through these digital transformation efforts, big digital transformation efforts with a lot of our federal government customers. And we're trying to do the same thing now with the nonprofit customers as well, who, when you look at what they have in terms of resources, they don't have near a tenth of the size of help and support and knowledge that a lot of the enterprise organizations have. So that's a challenge on itself.
Yeah, I can imagine. So shifting gears here a bit, you've been in value across a number of organizations. Where have you seen the rollout of value selling fall on its face or not succeed? And what are the reasons? What are the pitfalls in rolling out a value selling motion?
So value selling motion, you have to have support, an executive sponsor, something like that on the sales organization side, right? I think that's very, very, very important. Seeing the differences in terms of how successful the value engineering or value management practice has been at ServiceNow and the scale that we have, and the types of alignment that we have to different sales leaders. I think that's extremely key. We've worked very hard to do that. Right. And previously, when I was at Informatica, we had a much smaller organization. And the processes that we had were very manual, and we really focused on helping identify specific opportunities for our enterprise customers. We were limited in what opportunities we could work and support on. However, right, it was important that we had support from all of our sales leaders. And that wasn't always the case, right? A lot of people believe that they could do it without the sales organization or the value management organization, that would slow deals down, right? Or, at the end of the day, what impact does the organization really have, right? Because it could be nebulous at times, right?
Yeah.
So you really have to have great alignment with sales leaders. And then you also have to have metrics that show what the difference is, right? What is the time to sell close for deals that have a business case or the value management or value team involved versus deals that don't, right? And what is the potential uplift, and what's the discount, expected discount reduction, right? So there's these metrics that are lagging indicators that are really, really important to track and to communicate and to make sure that you're showing that the value team is having a positive impact on that sales cycle. So not having that alignment and not having that support from sales is where we see things fall apart.
I mean, it would strike me that a pretty obvious one, that if you apply more business cases to deals, you're going to win more deals, right? As long as they're done well. And, I've simplified it tremendously by saying that, but if you apply more value selling, and ultimately the end product is a business case. But it's surprising how that is, maybe outside of the 200 companies that practice this on in a very professional manner, how little consensus there is around that. And I wonder why. I wonder if it's a question of sophistication in sales teams, or understanding of what value selling actually is, if it's maybe still a nebulous concept.
In my experience, I don't think it's such a nebulous concept anymore.
Exactly.
I do think sometimes it really depends on how the customer feedback is. to be honest, right? And it could be, do they trust the numbers that you're providing for them, right? Do they believe that they're directionally correct, right? Because you're not, it really depends after the handoff, how implementation goes, what strategies change,
Sure.
what leadership changes, and things like that. And so there may be anecdotal evidence from customers that get back to sales teams that sometimes really, I would say, put a chip in the armor of some of the value management teams that are looking to show the alignment and the value that the team actually brings. So I think sometimes at the end of the day, we may see that being an influence. But I think as we think about that, right, we really have to focus on our customer, their mission, their outcomes, and really align what we're providing from a value standpoint to that, to ensure that the customers understand what this is going to actually do for them.
Yeah, I fully see that. At what point do you usually introduce the business case in a sales process? There's always a misconception that it's a closing tool, but you and I both know that it's very much not just a closing tool.
Yeah, it's a great question. And I've been in situations where you get called in the 11th hour, where it's like, we didn't
Meeting
know
the
we
board.
this, and we, from the customer side said they needed a justification, and we needed, and those never work out well. Yeah.
There's already doubt, right? That's the reason.
Yeah, there's already doubt, and then you're scrambling to put things together, and you're never going to get the right information that you need to put something compelling together, and you're kind of dead in the water, right?
Yeah,
Dead on
yeah.
arrival. Day. What I think is helpful is being engaged with the sales team during the account planning process, right? Embedding yourself with, especially on a lot of the strategic accounts or strategic deals, understand that early on and have a plan to be engaged in that account planning process. Because what you could do there's a couple things you could do there. One, you can develop a strategy up front in terms of how you introduce value to the customer. You could do an outside-in analysis up front, show them how you align to their outcomes. You've done your research, you've read their 10Ks, you've read the strategy documents or planning documents that they put out, and you have a perspective. You walk in with a perspective, right? And the best salespeople that I've worked with understand that, right? They either build a perspective themselves, right?
That's so important.
And then bring you into the conversation to validate it and provide your expertise, and then obviously introduce you to the customer and kind of go from there, right? The best accounts and opportunities that I've worked on is where I've had relationships directly with the customer, and there was no go-between with the account team, right? You get introduced, you're the expert, you're going to help them see value, you're going to walk them through the entire process, and off you go. That, I think, is best practice, and it's worked really, really well for me in my experiences with specific customers. And you can pivot multiple times, right? I mean, there's other things that you can bring to the table, whether it's in a customer story. It's like, hey, here's a customer story and here's the value that we helped produce for them if there's doubt, right? Or if they need a little bit more help to get over the hump. Obviously, you have to have the technical win. There's the SCs and the account team to really support that process. But I think working with your solution consultants, we're after the same information most of the time, right? So why not go in discovery in tandem and get what you need from your aspect to build your models and financial analysis and overall alignment to outcomes. And in that same conversations, the SCs can get their requirements to build what they need to build and work on, right? And so I think having that from the jump is extremely important. And it's worked really well for me in my career. And that's kind of how I coach people as well and mentor people to align to as well.
Awesome. Thanks, Hamaad. Well, look, the time has come for me to ask you the two relatively uncomfortable questions. The first one is, in your long career in business value and value consulting, who has been the best business value consultant you've worked with?
That's a great question, Martin. I've worked with a lot of people over my 10 years. And the name that pops out to me first is Stefan Zoder. I worked with Stefan Zoder at Informatica, and we were a mighty team of three. And so it was me, him, and another individual, but I got to know him really well, and he became sort of a mentor for me in the value management space. I didn't know much about value management before I got to Informatica. From Kearney, there was a whole host of people that went to SAP and a few other folks. And so that was my introduction to value management. But when I got there, what things I learned from Stefan is just the attention to detail that you want to have in that discovery process, right? Because sometimes the customer doesn't know what they don't know, and you have to guide them a little bit.
Yeah, it's a unique
And
skill.
yeah. And so that was an experience and that I've carried with me throughout my entire career. There's some parts of advice that he's imparted that I've imparted to others as well, right? Specifically when it comes to, know the technology that you're selling as
Yeah,
well. Like sometimes you go in there with this consultative mindset, but be diving deep into understanding what the capability is and what that capability can unlock is going to really help you better tell the story for your customer.
right. Thank you for that. And equally on the sales side, who was the best account exec that you've ever partnered with?
So as I mentioned before in our conversation around, when is the best time to introduce the value management team or function into the sales cycle, and I mentioned the account planning process is key. And so there is an account executive that I worked with at ServiceNow on the federal government side, where we had lots of success. His name is Jetta Deloria. I believe he's still there. I think he now leads the team for the VA at ServiceNow. And he was always open to have me as part of the team, whether it was planning, EB executive briefings, summits, conversations with partners, right? And so making sure that we had the value story ready at every conversation, right? And that really helped. It's been one of the biggest accounts that ServiceNow has had for a
Amazing.
while. It was 5 at least, and it's really because of that process and
Amazing.
because of his leadership there.
Hamaad, thank you so much. Really interesting. Great speaking to you
Yeah.
today.
Thank you, Martin.